got lost in the woods. And so you can use search and rescue alerts to notify people of search parties that are being organized. So this one says, Hansel and Gretel got lost in the woods last night. To participate in the search party, please visit the town square at 1 p.m. today. So then you can show up at the town square and start participating in the formal search party. So that's a little bit about the searchers. Are you all on board? Are you ready for this demonstration?
We are ready.
I really hope it doesn't break. But if you have a computer, go to searchandrescuealerts.com and I want you to sign up. If you don't have a computer, you can get with someone next to you. I looked at a mobile device and it looked a little funky, so you can try it and we'll see if it works. Just try not to break anything. That's all. Did you break something?
No, it's streaming.
Working?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's a new link though.
So you should see something like this. And then you can click sign up here or in the top right, depending on what your preference is. Am I going too fast? Are you good? Is this about where you're at? So here you can say, it says at the top, I have my location preferences set to ask me if someone wants to use my location. So you can click allow, and as you scroll down, you'll see a map that will automatically zoom in on your current location. So we're in Provo. It can tell that we're in Provo. I want you to sign up with real phone numbers because I want to send you a text message, okay? So drop a pin. You can edit and say, I want this, I don't know, maybe you're a traveler and you want a big radius, I don't know. You can make that as big or small as you want.
So there's no restriction on size?
Nope. You can make it the whole world if you want.
Wow.
I don't know if you're just like really active in finding missing people.
Maybe if we had planes or maybe ships.
Teleporters. Yeah, these would all be good things. Okay, those of you that are signing up, give me a thumbs up or look at me or something when you're done.
Almost.
Show them what the page they should end up on is.
Oops. Let me go back and log in. Oh, wrong keyboard. Teachers do that, and I'm always like, why do they do that? Anyway, I understand now.
That's what these presentations are all about.
Understanding teachers.
Where the projection is in your eyes.
I don't have tall enough for that. The Firefox logo, yeah. So you should end up on a page that kind of looks like this. So you're there, kind of. So that's the My Account page where you can edit your information. But I wanted to show you a little bit about our database and how that is working. So this is MySQL Workbench. We have a MySQL database. I'm just going to refresh this user table. Wow, lots of people. That's a lot more than we had before. That's great. So I want you to just notice here in the password we have this giant hash. We're not storing passwords in plain text. Yay!
Are they salted?
And each user has a unique salt.
Yeah, very good.
Salted.
So yay!
All those spices we want.
Flavored. See, we learned something in school. Don't store passwords in plain text, right?
That's very good.
Next, I just kind of want to show you what a law enforcement agent would do to... So if a law enforcement agency or person was to log in, this is kind of the dashboard they would see. We have 3 open campaigns right now in their area, so that's 3 different missing people. Well, in this case, it's 2, but these are the missing people. And if I wanted to send a campaign about this open campaign, I want to send a message. Let's say for Wendy, I can hover over it and click the send message. And here, it automatically pulls in a list of everybody that has signed up. You've been approved. We just approved you. So you're on the list. This is a list of people that are going to get the message. What should I say?
It works.
It works. Thanks for coming to our presentation. Let's find Wendy together. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, who gets it first? When your phone buzzes, shout.
You have to fit it in one down.
I got it. What?
Lane ones.
Oh, I hear buzzes.
I have candy one.
You got
Oh,
it.
done
Good, good. Sometimes I worry that it's not going to send.
That's
Sue hasn't
okay.
seen that yet. We got that working like last night at like midnight. So anyway, that's kind of an example of how that can work. We can get word out immediately. There should be no delay.
So
Is it always coming from that same number?
Yes, that is the number. We're using a service called Twilio,
Okay.
Twilio.com. Go check it out. And they give us the same number that we always send the messages from.
That way you can put in your contacts, you know.
Yeah, you know who it is. Yeah, like what is this number, you know?
So your list of recipients here is using the geolocation data and doing the calculations?
We are making it look like it is, but no,
Okay.
right now it is not. That is
Yeah.
the next step.
Okay.
I think we can get that working before next Tuesday. We're really close.
Great.
Other questions about the demo? I'm like really excited that it's working, so.
That is a good thing.
Oh, F11. So I think that's the end of the demonstration. We kind of want to go over some of our lessons learned, what we should have done, did do. That was great. Thanks.
Let's see. And
You have to hit the nothing.
Good.
It's good.
Awesome. So we did learn a lot from this project. We wanted to talk about some of the things we learned. So in general, we spent a lot less time coding than we anticipated or wanted. We kind of, at the beginning, we definitely felt like we bit off more than we can chew. We chose a bunch of technologies that we had little to no exposure on, and we just wanted to tackle it and do everything. And so we spent a lot more time learning technologies and setting up Amazon Web Services and connecting databases and troubleshooting and things like that. So that was something we didn't anticipate, but in the future we'd want to kind of front load our work a little bit better. We've probably all learned that every time we do a new project or something that we wish we would have done more at the beginning. But those are things that we thought of, that we learned. One great thing that we learned, and I kind of learned this on an internship and we implemented it, and it works great every time, is that when you peer program, I think, in my opinion, you can be more efficient than programming on your own, even though two people are sometimes just working on the same bit of code. Because a lot of times you're looking for that missing semicolon or a curly brace, but I caught a lot of things that my teammates were doing, and they caught things from me when we're helping each other code. You can bounce off ideas and ask questions and pool your expertise and your knowledge of programming, and that was really helpful for us.
Really helpful.
So as you guys know, or if in case you didn't know, this was not our idea. The original idea came from a man named Joel Nielsen, and Sue is an associate of Joel, and Sue and Ernie Nielsen and Joel have been our sponsors. So we had weekly hangouts on Google with them where we talked about our progress. It kind of was like the essence of what we are as information systems majors. When I was told about the program, it was like, we want you to learn how to be the interface between the business and the technical. And so working with people without a technical background was interesting and a good experience for us to explain and communicate those things in a way that they can understand. And Sue knows what we're talking about there. So it was a good experience, just overcoming that knowledge barrier about who knew what about technology and what's possible and what's not. And that was good for us.
Can I just jump in
Sure.
real fast? So I feel like recently, especially in the MISM, we've been focusing a lot on how to speak tech. Like we've really focused on how to program, how to do things technically. And recently, in the past year, I haven't really practiced with business, and so it was good to speak business again as well as tech. I found the balance again.
So one thing that we wish we would have done earlier, but we have been doing, is going out to find the end user and get feedback. We've learned that a lot, that it's so good to do prototypes, to do wireframes. We wish we would have done that earlier. But we did go up to Sandy and talk to the Sandy City Emergency Manager and talk to him about our project. We presented it to him, asked for feedback. One interesting thing we found that sometimes you don't know who the right person is that needs your product. And so one lesson we learned was about that. He ended up not being the right person, but he pointed us in the right direction. He gave us good feedback, things that were unclear to him that we thought were clear, we needed to make more clear. So that was good for us, and we're going to continue to reach out to law enforcement agencies and city management to look into getting this actually used. These are the technologies that we used, and as of before the project, we had exposure to MySQL and GitHub, and some Linux, but everything else was kind of really new for us and a great experience. We'll just go over a couple of things that we learned from there. So REST was kind of a buzzword that we learned about a little bit, but I actually never. It was very nebulous to me. I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know what was going on there. I really feel like we as a team have come to understand that a lot better. And just the idea, Sarah was kind of on the front end, Didi and I were more on the back. Well, Didi did some of both, but just the idea of throwing information back and forth from the front and the back was really good for us to learn. For the more experienced and practiced web developers, this was a no-brainer. But to us, it was something that was good for us to learn how to use JSON objects. API documentation. Has anyone ever used a service called apiary.io? This was super useful for us, and I'm just actually going to show you a little bit of it real quick. But
and it has a fun name too, apiary. I don't know, it's kind of fun.
That makes me think of bees.
Oh, a little bit, yeah. Actually, when we Googled for the logo for apiary, we got a lot of bee stuff.
we got a lot of that. So here we were able to document and kind of make a contract between the front end and the back end as far as what we were going to expect when we call certain RESTful calls. So, and we can see here, let's see. So if you just click on for the get user with an email, this is exactly what I'm going to expect to get from Sarah on the front end when I need to get a user. So this was really useful for us. Another thing that we learned about was something called Postman. So Postman is a kind of a RESTful Chrome web app to help people to just understand what they're getting back and what they're sending from the database. And we found this to be super useful. And just to kind of demonstrate a little bit of, so this is just sending to my local host how many days until graduation. We've got 15 more days left. We're excited about that. But that went to my local. I just added last night just a little get URL for that to send back, just to demonstrate that. But a more realistic one would be going directly to the database. We're doing a get request, and we're going to get everyone that has signed up in the database. And this just helps us to understand the information that we're passing back and forth. So you can see some of your email addresses here. That was really cool for us.
So to jump in again, because I do that. So we were working asynchronously. I tend to work either really, really late at night or like early in the morning, and Andy liked to work in the afternoons. And so before we started peer programming and finding time to work together, we needed a contract between us because I was mislabeling variables instead of longitude or long. I did LOG, and it was supposed to be LON, like very little things. And so by using apiary.io, we were able to commit to what it really needed to be so that we could speak the same language.
Very good.
Just some brief things we learned. JavaScript, we had some basic understanding of, but we actually never really got into, or in practical use, how important callback functions are because things work asynchronously and making sure we get that right. Debugging, we're used to Java and how you can step through and look at your objects, but we just kind of had to, sometimes it was like, please, we just want to see like why this isn't happening, so we console.log everything to death. So that was a good experience for us to learn how to code that way. As was talked about in the previous presentation, Node is built off of modules. It was really great for us to, if we wanted to use some functionality, we could pull it in. We needed to do login, so we brought in a module called Passport to help us with that. Interfacing with our database with MySQL, this module called SQLize would totally abstract that for us and make it a lot more simple to interact and design and implement our database. That was great. Also for security, there's a module called Crypto, and that just gave us all the functionality we needed. It kind of felt like learning a new little mini language each time we added a module, but it was great.
Can I talk about Elastic Beanstalk?
Oh yeah.
We're almost done. So Elastic Beanstalk, has anyone here used Amazon Web Services before? A few. Did you guys use it for Node at all? Okay, so there's this really cool thing called Elastic Beanstalk, and it's about taking your Node application and you push it using Git, and it's like this Elastic Beanstalk that grows into the Amazon Web Services cloud. It's a really good image. And so it is optimized for Node. So when, for example, I have the website running on searchandrescuealerts.com, and then I push up a new version, and then it spins up the new version, and then it takes this one down, and all the new users go to the new one. So you can update your website without any downtime. Awesome. And it's totally free with Amazon Web Services. So we should all use it. It's great.
So it's really the platform as a service built on top of Amazon's EC2,
Exactly.
which is the infrastructure
Exactly.
as a service. And so there's actually flavors for not just Node, but all sorts of different platforms.
So have you used Elastic Beanstalk?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that nice?
In
I found it.
one this year, all the students had
Oh,
to
cool.
use it to deploy to Java.
Oh, cool. Man,
Yeah, it's
even our education is leveling up each year. So I love it. I love it to pieces. I actually updated it this morning, our website, and I just pushed it up with Elastic Beanstalk. It's great.
Yeah, so we also learned a lot about database during our progress about for this project. So we learned MySQL, and we learned how to create tables in MySQL, and we learned how to link each primary keys of each table together, and also the foreign keys to make it work. And we transfer our data to Amazon Web Services at the end, and we spent about $60.
So the bill was $60, and I'm like, holy cow, what am I doing wrong? Sorry, Sue. I was like, what am I doing wrong? $60. This should not cost $60 each month. I had one setting wrong that cost me like 3 times as much as it should have. So anyway, careful with your settings.
That's just money.
It's just money. So actually, it's free for the first year that you use Amazon Web Services.
If you have the right settings.
If you have the right settings. So when the bill came in, I'm like, what did I do wrong? So lesson learned. Check your settings. Don't use the multiple AZ instance. Use the single one. That's what I've learned.
Yep. Another lesson we learned is that we accidentally dropped the database once, which
Andy dropped the database.
so
Ouch.
yeah.
The most painful version of lessons learned.
It was at a very early stage. It was a good learning experience.
Yep, it was a good learning experience, and we learned that we will make sure the command line we send to the database before we click enter. Yep. Thank you. So we also have something that we want moving forward, and for short term and long term. So we haven't done the things that listed in the left in the right, and such as select a user based on location. So right now, when we send out messages, we will just send out to all the users in our database, but we really want to send out to the users based on their location and the location of the campaign, so that people can only get messages based on the location, the address they select. And also, we haven't done the logout, so right now you can only log in by putting logouts, but you can close the browser anyways. And also, we really want to have our mobile app ready, but we are out of time. And also the social media messaging, like Facebook, Twitter, and other social media things. So we think this is a great opportunity for to hand into the next Capstone team next year to work on it. And in conclusion, we want to say thank you. We really appreciate the education we got from this program, and we cannot do this project successfully without all the education and all the things we learned. And we are grateful that we had this opportunity to apply what we learned from this program to this project. And you guys have something to say?
Yeah, just doing this project, there's no way we could have done this project a few years ago. And even at the beginning of the semester, I wasn't sure if we could do it, but I really think that we've succeeded. And it just really goes to show that our education was really great, and this really was a capstone for our degree. That's all.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So,
Any other questions?
yeah, tell me a little
We have
bit
11
about,
seconds.
perfect. Tell me a little bit about your kind of what would still be needed in order to make this useful to law enforcement agencies. How likely it is, or how likely is it that this will be deployed to them at some point, kind of going forward?
So as we learned last week when we met with the emergency manager at Sandy City. The law enforcement agency is a tough nut to crack. They don't want change. They're a very tight-knit, just do it the way it's always been kind of group. But we actually have an appointment to meet with the detective of Sandy City, who's in charge of like missing people and property cases. We have an appointment with him next Monday or the Monday after. And so the door has been cracked and our foot is in the door. And so yes, I think that it will be used with law enforcement agencies, but it will take a lot of time to get the user adoption.
And it takes a lot of change management principles to get that adoption.
Convince them that it's worth the change.
Interesting, huh? And what percentage of the feature set do you currently have implemented that you think would be kind of the minimum viable product for these agencies to actually pick up and use?
80%, I would. What do you think?
So these things on the right are the things that we'd want before we put it into live use. But
we're really close.
Due to the learning curve, we've actually really picked up speed in the past few weeks as far as feeling like we've learned enough to say, this is what we want to do next, let's tackle it. It still takes a lot of time, but it's not like we don't even know the framework or the language underneath it or the language that's built off of it, which was kind of how we started off. Yep. So we've come up to speed, and these other features are going to be coming soon. So in the next few weeks, I imagine we'll be able to get the minimum viable product finished.
And we plan on working on this after graduation. I mean,
we'll have anything else to do, right?
Yeah, we have all this free time, so let's do something.
What other questions do you have?
I have a few security related questions.
So
I noticed on the password, so are you hashing them on the back end?
We are.
And I didn't notice any certificates that you're sending passwords across in plain text.
That is something
that we need to look into.
Yeah.
We think that it's secure, but we haven't looked at it. We've just kind of ignorantly ignored it. So
you'll need to at least use a certificate. Don't use OpenSSL unless you use the
exactly. So I think that goes into this third from the bottom, user sessions. Also along security, that's something that we're very close to implementing.
Okay, the second one I had, I noticed that from your Postman you made a local request to your live host name, and that's called a cross-origin request. So did you add some headers to allow your server to do that?
No, that's something that we haven't implemented into our API call that you need to be authorized to make certain calls yet. So we're still implementing that.
So by default, it's open.
We know
you
that
have to lock it down.
We know that we need to lock that down, but
we were kind of hoping you wouldn't notice, but you did. So thank you.
Anyways, those are the two things I noticed. So.
No, those are things that we are aware of and that we're moving forward with.
Yeah.
They're on the list of things to.
Take care of your users.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
If you want to have a question, Lane, go ahead and as a transition.
Is this ready to kind of go nationwide? You just need to kind of.
So the business model is fine for the whole nation. It kind of breaks if you leave U.S. or Canada. The business model kind of breaks, but yeah, it's already nationalized.
So people just have to sign up.
Yeah.
All right. Seth and his group brought donuts, so you guys better eat some.
You guys brought those?
Yeah, I brought them. Yeah, I'm just gonna stay with this.
Well, I'll do my.
Change the wording on your slides. That's okay. Which one's mine? Retractable.
Like walk around the whole room.
Oh, you better just
What did you wear for Intex?
Okay, you know what happened there?
No, I don't.
Jeremy at 1 a.m. was like, I don't think we have to dress up. And he's not Jeremy yet. Jeremy like persuades everything in his way. And so he's like, I don't think we have to dress up. And he's like, I think we have to. And Jeremy's like, no, we don't have to. It's okay. We can just wear colored shirts. And Josh is just like, well, we're on colored shirts, that's fine. And so I just wear colored shirts.
Adam Wright. He pounded us. He was like, I can't take this seriously because you're not dressed up. Yeah, there's a lot of things I learned from my time here at BYU. Oh my gosh, don't post on Island. But guess where I'm going? Beta. Oh, hey. All 3 viewers out there.
An archive for eternity.
Yes.
Is this new stream song?
I
was late.
The comments will change.
People watching it?
There's 3. Is your stuff? Oh.
So you guys heard the drill, right? 20 minutes to present, 5
10
minutes for question, probably interviewed.
All right. I got my device with me too.
Okay. Do we need more devices?
No, I think they're good.
All right, well, I'll start as Brian goes. So here's our capstone project. We codenamed it Tomato Mobile, and so we spent our time building an application to be able to communicate and manipulate a router that's flashed with Tomato. So what is Tomato? Tomato is just basically a firmware that's similar to DDWRT. That's on a common router, a home use router. It's third-party software made by a guy in Poland, and it's known to be kind of a simple, easy-to-use interface, but has just a ton of functionality. You can get very low level to the NVRAM with the firmware. You can write scripts to customize your usage of it. There's just a whole plethora of things that that you could do. Dang it. I left my computer open and Wayne's playing with it. So it's just largely customizable, and that's why it's widely used. And yeah, it's a pretty sweet machine. This is kind of like the way it looks. So you can see it's not the DDWRT that's common, where it's the black in your face, but it's kind of more subtle, more soft, invites you in, tucks you in at night. It makes all your data secure, and you feel so loved from Tomato.
I'm feeling the love now. So the issue that we were facing with this project was mostly the time constraint and the learning curve that it takes to use a computer to log in to a router and make changes necessary for a home network and use. And at Dr. Masurbi's recommendation, we went out and kind of talked with some friends and family to kind of figure out what kind of scope or what kind of usage out of a router people would like, and what kind of settings they would like to deal with on a regular basis. And so one of the things that we found out was kind of cumbersome was the sheer number of settings and configuration parameters that you have to deal with when using a router and changing the settings in it. A lot of the things get complicated, and at least for us, we've had networking and all those things, and so we've learned a lot of the skills needed to do this, and so it was important for us to kind of talk with other people and gauge that kind of usage. And so that was the issue we were facing, and what we decided was that a reduced interface would be kind of leaps and bounds as far as utility for the average user. And so the scope that we came up with was mostly home users, the average user, kind of 80% of the people that would be interfacing with a router in a use case like this. And so the solution that we came up with was to make a convenient mobile application to interface with a router, and for our purposes, we were using a router flush with Tomato. And the whole idea behind this was to create an application that would be easy to use, easy to log into, and easy to apply basic configuration to, so that the home network could have rules, access restrictions, and things like that. Yeah.
Let me jump in and say, I think your business value also includes, and it's encapsulated in what you're saying, but being able to easily do this and create an environment where people would do this rather than having to get onto the machine, create groups, manage those groups, so that in my mind that the business value, maybe because of my perspective, is how do I do this quickly as I'm leaving the house so my kids can't get access to the internet? And while that you could do that on the existing thing, it's more than just reduced features and functionality that you're presenting. You're presenting it packaged in a way that adds new value to me as a user, rather than, oh, let me go log on to the computer, find all the devices that I want to disable, click a button, etc. So I think, you know, as you sell the project, it's important to say it's not just reduced functionality, it's new functionality packaged in a way that adds additional value.
Thanks. And that was kind of one of the main use cases that we came up with, was the situation in which a parent wants to have access restrictions for their kids as they're leaving, or, you know, just really quickly, instead of having to go in every time and create a rule, or go in and take the time to actually apply that.
Yeah, so kind of like what Dr. Masuri was saying, what we wanted to do was create something really easy for people to use on the fly, to do some basic router utility functions, but then also be able to, on the fly, create these access restrictions for parents, you know, so that when you're going out on a date with your wife and your kids are at home and you want to, you know, create a rule that they don't use the internet after 11 or something like that, you don't have to go online, log into the router, you don't have to sit down at your computer, write up the rule, enable it, and go. Or we want you to be able to do it on the fly as you're leaving. So to actually just show the router, or just show the app, feels like such almost a letdown, because it doesn't take into account how much time we spent like prepping for it and doing the research for it. So I want to talk a little bit about how we came to the decision of using the things that we use. So we started just trying to decide, you know, where should we start? None of us have had any background in mobile development. I worked as a web developer. Brian works in QA over at Domo, and Joel does everything. And so, I mean, Joel probably had the greatest background that we could utilize. So we decided to go into Android because we've all used Java before. We decided to try out Android Studio. It's in its alpha right now. Mm-hmm. It's a new product from Google to help developers use Android, and use version control with Git. What we decided to do was to use the framework that already exists for Tomato. So by using the services that already exist on the router, we were able to create an app that makes certain posts and certain, you know, we're able to script certain post requests and things like that to the router, and in that way be able to manipulate the router and get information back from the router and bring it back in a format that actually works. Is that working?
No, sorry, yeah, your mic just keeps going.
Oh. I'll do a text her and let her know. But we really tried to build it using MVC. So maybe if we have some extra time, we can actually pull up the code and kind of show you what we did. But it was really cool. We relied heavily on a connection class and on a parser class, as we were getting a lot of web requests back. So, without talking about it anymore.
Tell us a little bit about the research behind documenting the Tomato functionality, because that was a substantial portion of what you did.
You want me to take that?
Yeah, of course.
So, the way that the router works is all through post methods. So we spent probably a solid, our first 20 to 30 hours spent just using Fiddler and monitoring the post back and forth. And there's no documentation that's out there. The guy in Poland that made the firmware, I tried reaching out to him to say, hey, can we get your documentation and stuff? And he never got back to me. So it was a lot of making minute changes and then reposting, seeing what comes back, making a minute change, seeing what posts come back, and then deferring what is being changed. There was a lot of going through the source code to see what the JavaScript was doing as soon as it hit the router, how that information was getting changed. So
it helped out a lot to kind of reverse engineer what he was doing and to analyze the network traffic that was happening as we would play around with the firmware itself and make different changes and things like that. And so that helped us build our own little API and kind of document all of the parameters that we were going to have to deal with in order to post these changes and interact with it through the app.
Very good. Thanks.
Yeah. We actually also, if we have time, we have like a whole API that Joel and Brian really put together that shows like all these different params that we dealt with and all these different and you know the fact that we actually did go through and evaluate all these using packet captures and things like that, and then analyze them and brought them back. So, all right. So on one side, I've got over here my phone that will be running the app on, and then over here we've got the web GUI client that's going to, we'll just verify information as we change it based on that. So, pull up our Tomato mobile app here. You can see that, we'll log out real quick so we go through the whole process. You can see I'm connected to Tomato Wi-Fi here. We'll open the app, and we've, for our convenience, pre-populated it with the information here. We'll take that out before we put it live in the App Store. But it asks for your username and password and the IP address that the router's at on your network. And if you're not connected to Wi-Fi, it'll actually prompt you to connect to your Wi-Fi before you
Can you throw in a port on that IP address also?
Could we throw a port on it?
Yeah, I mean, right now, if you put a port on your network,
Yeah.
I think that'd be convenient as you switch from internal to external addresses. And
Yep. If you put a port on that, it will work just the same way. So we've got 4 main simple sections right now. We've got the router section. Did you want to go over these 2 sections? Router
sure.
and basic.
So, as Gary was saying, we have 4 main sections right now. In our first version, we have the router, devices, basics, and groups. I'm going to talk quickly about router and basic, and these 2 pages are kind of more, whoops.
Meant to be used in vertical.
It actually does look all right horizontally, but. So the router and basic pages are mainly informative pages. I'll go into the router page here. They kind of give usage statistics and kind of important details for your consideration, I guess. This page is kind of fun. It just kind of you can update it and get these up-to-date details, and it's pretty nice. That's the router screen. Basic screen is kind of similar. It involves a couple of things that you can change, including the router name and some of the subnet mask and DHCP pool and all that kind of things, all those kind of things. Future functionality here will be changing a couple of other things, including the encryption settings and security settings that we were working on. Is coming down the pipe, just wasn't quite ready yet, and hopefully someday will be.
Just to verify, change the router name. So.
Yeah, go ahead and change the router name. And we were working last night on being able to on the fly change the SSID and the IP address of the router. But the issue with that is that it'll then kick you off of your session. And with Android, it's really hard to find a graceful way to kick you out of the app and make you restart the app and re-log in, things like that. And so we're still finding a good way to do that. The functionality is there. We just have to find a good way to make it play with the app.
Maybe.
Oh, I didn't feel it. What version do you have on this?
It's the brand new version.
Oh, it is.
But so if we hit,
so we're killing them the first time.
If we hit refresh here on the web app, you can see up here that it's actually been changed.
Yeah.
One of the issues that we were running into with making some of the changes last night was that we were working on changing the SSID and IP address, but when that happens, we reset the router, and so it automatically drops the app from the network. And so we actually haven't been able to figure out a way or found a way to keep the app alive and reconnect to it without going out of the app, reconnecting to the network, and then logging back in.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of one of the hurdles that we've been working on. But
honestly, though, some of those basic utilities aren't our main focus with this.
I would agree with that.
It's not something that we want you to use to like initially set up your router. It's something we want you to use to be able to create some of these access restriction rules and things like that on the fly. So Joel's going to talk about the devices group, the devices page, because that's his baby.
The router doesn't know, well, it knows what is connected to it, but it doesn't know what is currently connected to it. And so there's a little bit of back-end that's going through on this to be able to figure out what is connected and what's currently accessing the router itself. So if you want to connect onto this, oh
The
man,
password is tomato password.
all lowercase.
All lowercase.
It'll go through,
Lots of
and you can see this is just a quick snapshot of it to see that these are Wi-Fi devices that are on there. If you hardwire yourself in, then it'll actually come in and it'll show just a little like computer monitor that's on it. And then on the right side, you can see that these little toggle switches are those that have currently are not restricted, but are actually having access onto to the router. So if I take Sean right here on the top, showing that it is connected, you can Google. Can you Google right now?
disconnects.
Okay. So if I toggle this switch, I'm at home and somebody's
out the door.
mouthing off to me or something, or you're walking out the door and you're like, sorry, then you get no internet access. You're grounded. And this is to ensure that there really is. So Sean, you're mouthing off. I just shut you down. If you go and try to now Google, does it work? Oh, it's only showing on the same screen. Perfect.
So if we come over here to access restriction, you'll see that what Joel just did was create a rule right there. Flag.
And Sean's device.
Address.
It's not working?
Not working.
Oh man! But because you're such a good boy, then we can flip you back on. So it's just an easy way to switch that back and on. And then if you disconnect from the router, connect to
I disconnected.
Oh, you disconnected?
Yeah.
So somebody then disconnects, and you can see that now, wow, there's a lot on there now. That Brian is now off of it, and shows that he was connected. We remember the device because we don't think that you'll just take your device and throw it out. Yeah, and so it's just a quick, easy snapshot to be able to see who is out there. We can still add the access rule for devices that aren't on there, that aren't currently connected for later uses. If
And something nice too is that now that Joel has turned off and there's no access restriction, he'll no longer take up one of the slots for access rules. It goes through, deletes the rule completely. You know, if he wants to do multiple people here, if we take off, Andy's laptop.
Sorry, Andy.
Sorry, Andy. And we take off Brian. Mouthing off, apparently. It'll go through into device restriction. You can see it's got multiple, so it'll pull in all those IP addresses. So that's something that we're really excited about. It lets you do it on the fly, really easy. Just log into the app, and you can turn things on and off. It'll store it. It'll keep it. It'll remember it. It'll remember every device that connects at the time. We'll turn you guys back on. And yeah, so that's our devices page. Pretty excited about that. So after we got devices running, we wanted to, like, what if there's groups of devices that you want to all control with certain rules? So we decided to implement a groups section. So what groups does, I had a lot of fun doing the groups section. What groups does is it allows you to create a group and then store certain devices within the group and create a rule that applies to that entire group. So you can see here I have one group already created. It's called kids. What it does is it's got this rule here. We've got a list of devices here that we might be able to add to it. So we'll throw in Brian's laptop. Throw Sean in that group because he's been picked on a lot. And we'll make that rule. We'll enable it for now. We'll leave it on. Let's say we'll just have it during the week here. We want to do it 10 p.m. till maybe like 7 a.m. And we hit save. What will happen is it'll go through and create that rule for you. Access restriction here. You can see here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. It's got it all selected. It's got all those MAC addresses. You can go through, change it. If we want to disable it, we can easily do something like that. Just say, you know what, they're on vacation. We don't care anymore. hit save, it'll disable that rule. So yeah, we're pretty excited about that. Add a new group. Say we want parents' devices. We'll enable that. So we, I don't know when you'd want to restrict all the parents' devices, but it'll go through here. We can grab these, save those. It'll on the fly create this new rule for us. You see the rule right there. If we go in here, delete the rule, it'll take out that rule on the app too. And the only restriction that we're really facing here is pulling in rules from the web app to the router. We're storing all the rules there on the router, but if you create a new rule and want to be able to pull it up on the app itself, that's something you have to start. You have to manage the rule from the app from the get-go if you want to be able to continue to use that rule and update it on the fly. So yeah, that's those are a couple of the features that we're really excited about, and that's a little demo of what we've got going on. Do you guys want to share anything else?
No, we can go
back to our presentation.
So lessons learned. Our first big thing was Android, and that there's an Android way. It's Java, and then it's not Java. You're writing in Java, but you're not writing in Java. For example, in the Android device, you can't restrict or stop the UI thread. So anything that the user sees, you can't make any network calls. You can't do really any logic off of that. You have to start up your own threads off of that. And so it's learning async tasks, and then it's learning intents and what you want to do. And each screen is an activity. So there's a whole different mindset with Android development that was a steep learning curve for us. And so we got to be exposed to that. A second thing was appropriate documentation really makes the coding process a lot easier. It was a lot easier since we'd gone through and figured out the router. That it made it a lot easier. It would have been a whole lot more easier if the first guy had just documented his code. So it was kind of a hit home for us to document what we have and document the code that he built. Another one was regular meetings keeps everyone focused. It was a lot easier as we met up, kind of what was mentioned with Andy's group, the peer review, as we met up to review each other's code, that went a lot quicker and it went a lot faster as we worked in the teams. Time to learn can be steep, but it can also be rewarding. And then finally, proper coding practices can go a long way. Related to the Android way, each language has its own different way of doing things. And though the language has changed and some of the concepts are similar, it's a lot easier as you really immerse yourself into that and say, well, this is Java, but it's not really Java, this is Android. And then just switching that, this is PHP, and it has its own different way to do things.
So upcoming, we've got some cool ideas that we'd like to put in there on the fly also. Allowing you to make profiles for if you're going out of the house or something like that. You just hit one thing like going out, and it does everything for you. You don't have to go through select devices. You don't have to check and make sure all the right devices are on that rule or anything like that. It'll just go through and do that for you, and that could be applied to vacations, school days, things like that. And then just some other configurations that we thought might be handy, for us as technical people, things that we'd like to do on the fly without having to get on a computer and do it. Some port forwarding, things like that would be pretty simple to implement. We just simply ran out of time doing some of those. So, and that's it. Any questions?
So for me, that profiles is a very important component. I have, 25 some odd devices at home of different types, and I want to shut off everything except the phone, my UMA, device. And so doing that, having a profile do that would be super important as I just during day and night turn off the internet or whatever.
And you can kind of accomplish it through the groups settings, but yeah.
Then I have to give specific time frames. Yeah. I don't know when I'm going to be home or whenever. So But yeah, super awesome, super awesome.
You guys may have covered it, I'm often a couple minutes late, but as far as profiles are concerned, like when you did implement that, when you're logging in, do you have to be on the network, or could you be across the country and still be making changes to your router?
That kind of depends on you. So if you have like a public IP address right now and you got the port, if you've got the port set up and you know what your public IP address is going to be, you can plug that into the URL right now and you could get into it.
Yeah.
We don't have any kind of, we're not programmatically storing, we can't get you through the firewalls or bypass any other routers between you and your device if you're out on 3G or LTE or whatever. But if you have a public IP address and you're plugged directly into that, you've got all the port forwarding and things like that set up, you should have no problem getting to your router.
And I can just imagine a scenario where you're off on a business trip,
Mm-hmm.
you set up your date night, all of a sudden, no one has internet. So.
Yeah.
Yes, I can see that too. Anything else? Any other questions?
Hey, Ron.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Well, I think we've seen 3 excellent projects this morning, and we'll have some more. The next one's at 11. That's in 674. But then we're back in the room here at 1 o'clock for some more this afternoon. Thanks for everyone for coming and attending and participating.
I need